Hello dog lovers, and in this video we're going to talk about recall. So I just wanted to go over a few things before you actually see me working with some dogs on recall. This way you're prepared to go into the exercise on your own at home. So first you want gloves. You're going to be working with a long line, and especially if you have a bigger dog or a pretty rambunctious puppy, it's very easy to get rope burn. And so I always wear gloves until I'm at a point with the dog where we're not getting a lot of tension, or I have to worry about them getting excited and running. So you're going to use a long line. I prefer 20 feet if I'm working outside. There's a reason for that. You want to at least do 15 feet or longer if you're working on a long line on recall, because you want the dog to be able to move far enough away from you that they think they're away. It's kind of similar to like a toddler. If they're right next to you, they go, oh, well, you can just get me. We're right here in the same space bubble. But once they move down the thing and then they go, oh, well, I can just run down this aisle. Your dog is kind of similar, where they get out far enough, they'll get distracted, something might catch their attention, and you're far enough away that they can disregard you or move on to do their own thing. So you want to use at least 15 foot. I like 20 foot because it gives me 5 foot of wiggle room. I've had other people work with 50 feet. That's a lot of line. You can definitely work with 50 feet, especially if you're out in a big field and you've got a lot of space to work with and not a lot of things to get caught up on. But 50 feet is a lot of extra slack to manage when you're working on recall. There's a couple of different types of lines. I often use this is like a cotton web 20-foot training line. You can get these at most pet stores or online, and you can get them in different sizes. So I always get the 20 foot. I have several of these, and this is one I usually work to start dogs in. I'll work in my yard. There's not a lot of things to get caught up on, and if you're just working on it with your pet dog, these are great. I also have, this one's 25 foot. This is a nylon braided one, and it's rolled, it's round. So if I'm out in the woods and I'm in a field where there's a lot of high grass and twigs and stuff, this one does not get caught up as often. This one will get caught up on a lot of stuff if you're out in the woods and doing that kind of thing. So you're gonna want something different if you're working in a more vegetative environment. So there's lots of trees or bushes, that kind of thing. You'll want something that is going to be able to slide right through and not get caught up on every little thing. If you have a small dog, so I'm talking like, if I have my 10 pounders, a lot of times I'll still use this to start, but at least 8 and under, you can just get a small dog tie out. This one's nylon and it's braided, and then it's just a regular tie out, so it's got a clip on both ends. I oftentimes, this one doesn't have, it had a knot, doesn't anymore. I will put a knot in it and then just clip it and make my own handle. And then you can still work with your 15 to 20 foot of line, and it's light, because one of the things you're going to want to pay attention to when working with your dog, especially a small dog, they're going to feel the weight of the long line because they're little, and that's a lot of weight, and so that's going to be pulling down on their collar or their harness, depending on what you're clipping it to. And as you work out of using the long line, you have to make sure that the dog is responding to you and your command, not to the weight of the long line or the tension of the line. Because then you don't really have actual recall to your words. The dog's just responding because it knows it's stuck on the line. So you can use a flat collar, your dog's regular flat collar, or a harness when you're working on recall. If it's a small dog, a lot of times I'll use a harness just because they can have pretty dainty necks. If it's a medium, if it's a puppy or a medium-sized dog, large-sized dog, oftentimes I will just work on their regular collar. If they're on a harness, I'll use the harness, but if they're just out, we'll just work on their regular collar, because I want recall all the time. Regardless of the equipment on the dog, if I want you to come to me, you should be coming in. So it actually works in your benefit later on. With the less equipment the dog associates with training, the better your response will be. You won't have to phase those out as you go, because the dog says, well, I'm not wearing my harness today, I don't need to come in. But you can you can do it, and we can show you how to kind of phase that out. So anyway, you got your gloves. you've got your long line, whichever one you prefer to use, and your dog's either got its harness or its collar on. And then you're gonna wanna pick some high value treats. I like to use freeze-dried or jerky. You'll see me work with our setter puppy who is very environmentally stimulated, and he gets excited about all smells, everything, you know, outside. So his rewards for coming in have to be, you know, brought up a notch. So I will use freeze-dried stuff. In the video I'm using actual like sausage and some leftover lunch meat. And I like to use petting. He loves to be pet, so we can use petting. We can use high value food for him. Scent toys also work well for him. So a tennis ball with some bird scent or some type of dog scent on there works well. If you have a dog that gets distracted really easily, I often recommend trying to find some kind of different scents that they wouldn't naturally smell and putting them on a toy, and you can use that as reward. You can use Tug. Tug is also a good reward. My Dachshund Pity mix thing loves Tug, so a lot of times when we recall and practice things, we'll do Tug as reinforcement. So you can have multiple things to do. You can use a ball. It's whatever works for your dog in the environment you're working on. So again, you're going back to that reward scale and trying to pick medium to high value. If your dog is too distracted outside, then I suggest starting in your home and start on like a 10-foot lead, because obviously you're inside. Working on a 20-foot lead doesn't always work unless you have an unfinished basement. That would be awesome. You could start in there. But just work on with a 10-foot line so that you are able to reel your dog in if they don't respond when you cue the first time. So a little bit of step-by-step. You're gonna put the long line on your dog, and you're going to give them the whole feet. So if you got 20 feet and you're outside, give them all 20 feet. If you're inside, give them all 10 feet. If your dog has not been exposed to recall at all, so say you have a brand new puppy and the puppy has no idea what you're asking, doing, any of that, then you're gonna wanna use your cue word, whether it's come, here. For our setter, we're using in to differentiate from other things. You can pick whatever works for you. A lot of people use come, doesn't matter. Pick one word, that's the word you're gonna use. Make sure everybody in the family is using the same word and that you're reinforcing it. Don't use it unless you're prepared to reward your dog for following through, because then you just wear out your cue word. So you got your dog and it's never done any recall before at all, then I usually use, you know, come and reel the puppy in. If it's a little puppy, a lot of times if you say come and then you have happy voices, that'll get the puppy's attention and they're like, oh, this is awesome, and they'll come in. You can also do it and backpedal, so you move away from the dog, and that can help engage the dog into coming with you. So they'll look and be like, oh, this is great, and come right in. They come in, you're gonna say, you know, use your correct response mark word. So yes, good dog, whatever you're using, and treat the dog. If you're doing tug with the dog, or you know, give them the ball, you're letting them smell the toy, whatever, you're reinforcing. So I'm just gonna say treat because that's just easy, and most people use that if their dog's food motivated. So you're gonna treat the dog. I like to give a release cue. So the dog came in, yeah, good job, here you go, here's your treat. And then release them. So they understand that recall, you want you to come in, but then there's an all done cue. So it can be okay, it can be free, all done. I usually like to pick one short word. You also want to make sure it's not one. A lot of people use okay, which is fine, except for if you're working on like a downstay or something later and you say okay in conversation, your dog's going to go, hey, I'm all done, and they're going to move out. So just be mindful of what you're using, but pick something that you'll remember, that's short, and that will be consistent. So the dog comes in, good boy, you give the treat, okay, and then I walk away so that the dog can decide to follow me or move out. Now, if your dog is familiar with recall, it's either somewhat comes sometimes, but doesn't come all the time, or it was an adoption and so the dog may have learned some kind of recall before, I do the 2-call rule. So I'll call the dog, come, and I let the dog decide. Are they gonna come in to me or are they going to continue to do what they're doing? If the dog comes to you, awesome, fantastic. Good dog, treat, okay, moving on. You're gonna have them come in and reward. If the dog is smelling, looks at you, but doesn't come in, and it's like, that's nice, I'm doing my own thing, you're gonna cue one more time, so come, and then you're gonna use that long line to reel them in, like a fish. You're gonna reel them in. When they get to you, you're going to reward. So you wanna make sure that you're teaching the dog, I called you, you need to come, that's what is expected, but when you come in, I'm gonna give you something awesome or fun, or we're gonna play, we're gonna do something that's worth your time. I'm gonna pet you. If you vary your rewards, as long as they're in the same value category, that actually helps, because then the dog doesn't go, oh, I'll just get the same treat every time. Some dogs don't care. I have a few that it doesn't matter what I give them, they will come because they want it every time. Other dogs get bored, they find a scent that's more interesting, and you've lost some of that value of you being important. So with recall, you are teaching the dog that you are the highest value item in the environment, which can be tough because they see you all the time. And if they hit something new or things that are more interesting, you're kind of like old newspaper. So you are building your value by rewarding the dog for coming in. So by giving the reinforcement and rewarding the dog and saying, hey, thank you for coming in, this is worth your time, you're making yourself more valuable, to the point that your dog, when they hear the word, it will become an automatic response, and they're not going to sit there and go, well, this smells really awesome, I heard you, but I really want to smell the smell. They will get to the point where they hear it and they just start to come, and they'll be already halfway to you before they're like, oh, I was doing something else, but I'm going to get rewarded. So this is an exercise people want to move too fast, because to you, come means come to the person. To your dog, it does not. They don't care, that you have to make it worth their time. So you have to really build that foundation of, when I call you, you come in, and then good things will happen. But that way I expect you to keep coming no matter what we're doing or where we are. I call you, you need to come in. It's a very good skill to really work on, because you could end up, if you're hiking or doing things and it's a safety issue and you need your dog to come to you now for a safety reason, having a good quality recall could make or break it for your dog. So take lots of time in these beginning stages, lots of time. I mean, you want to work it so much that your dog's just coming and coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. So with that said, there's a couple of things that you're going to want to look out for while you're working on the long line. And these will be keys to tell you if you can move to the next stage. So you're going to work with your dog on the long line, and you're holding the other end. It's not on the ground. It's not, the dog can't move more than 20 feet. You have it attached to you. You're holding the end. The dog's attached to the other end. And you're literally either walking around your yard to start or your house, calling your dog. They come in, good dog, reward, okay. Moving on. Or calling, they're not coming in. You'll see in the video, because my puppy gets really distracted on scents. So he's actually a really good one to watch, because he's not coming in. So you'll see me reel his little butt in a couple of times, because he found something more valuable than me at the moment. And so you reel the puppy in, or the dog, reward. Then you're gonna, let them go out. And you're gonna do this, and you're gonna move around your yard, and it's gonna be repetitive. And once your dog gets good about doing it in that location, you're going to switch locations. You want your dog to be good at coming to you on the long line at like 6 to 7 locations before you really wanna move out into anything else. Because your dog does not generalize well. They don't go from one location to another and take that same behavior they learned in location A to location B automatically. That's why a lot of times if you've taken puppy classes and your dog learns to sit down, stay, and they do great in puppy class, and they do great at home, and then you go to the vet and they can't sit. It's because they don't generalize to the broader environments that they're going to go into. They just know, hey, in puppy class, I do this here. At home, I do this here. You have to go out to multiple locations and work those same behaviors with the same follow-through and reinforcement that you've done in training to get the dog to go, oh, no matter where we go, I should be sitting when they say sit. So recall is one of those that I try to hit as many spots as I can with the long line, and that's all I'm working on. We're just going out, calling and treating, calling and treating, and seeing things, and calling and treating, and calling and treating, or tugging, or petting, whatever. Once you're working in that kind of realm, you have your long line, okay? You want to see your dog is going to be on the end. They're going to be out doing stuff. Now, you do not want to move on to dropping the long line and working on recall until your dog can turn, U-turn in mid send out, I guess is the best way to say it. So your dog's moving away from you on the long line, okay? And then you want to be able to call them. So I usually try to let them get about 10, 15 feet and call them. If the dog turns and comes back, and you still have that 10 to 5 feet of slack on the ground, there's no tension on your long line, the dog turns around and comes back to you, you reward. The dog is responding to your verbal command, okay? So the dog heard you say come, or, you know, Fluffy come, whatever you're using, and the dog turns and comes back. Now, if your dog, you call, Fluffy come, and they continue to go until they hit the end of the line, and then you get this tension, or they bop it, and then they come back, they're responding to the tension on the line. So a dog that responds to the tension on the line, and you drop that long line, you have no recall, because there will never be tension on the line. They're just going to keep on going because you dropped it. You want the dog responding to your verbal. So I want that U-turn before we have tension on the line when we're out working. That's what I look for when I'm working on recall with long line. So I want you, when I say come, you should be coming back to me, no thoughts, just boop, come back. You shouldn't be hitting the end of the line. I shouldn't have to reel you in. That tells me that we are ready to move on to the next step, where we would have the long line attached to the dog. It's our safety net, and we would drop the line. But we're not going to cover that in this video, because I want you to spend a lot of time working on your long line. And some dogs, I can move through the long line phase in a couple weeks. We work on a little bit every time. We hit multiple locations, and the dog may be super person motivated or treat motivated. It makes it really easy if they're that way. If you have a dog that is highly externally motivated, and scents or different environmental components are so distracting that even your high value treats aren't really doing it, petting, you kind of have to work for it a little bit more, then you're not going to be able to bop through this in 2 weeks. You're going to be looking at spending a good month of really just, hey, I said come, hey, I said come, hey, I said come, and I need you in, and I need you in, and hitting multiple environments and that kind of thing before you want to move to having your long line dropped. I'm hoping to get some even more video as we move through with my setter puppy, because he is very scent distracted. I mean, that's why we got him for hunting. So we want that, component, but also when it comes to working on certain things like recall, then you have to put more work in because you're not as valuable as everything else going on. If you have, any type of herding breed, they often are very human oriented, and they'll pick this up pretty quick. I've had a lot of shepherds and Aussies and stuff come through in a couple weeks. You got a good recall there that you can move on. You still have to reinforce, you still have to make sure you follow through. But that kind of thing, that comes through really nice. So get your long line, get your reinforcements, what you're going to use as rewards, and your gloves, and then pick where is the least distractive to work with your dog or puppy when working on recall. Now, a couple of posts before, things not to do, don't repeat yourself 2 times. That's the most you're going to be using your cue. So once is to get the dog to see if they'll respond without you reeling them in. And then the second one is, no, I called you, follow through. You will eventually phase out that second recall, but this way it gives people, if I give you a number, you're less likely to be the person that says, come, 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 come on, Fluffy, come on, Fluffy, come. By doing that, all you're doing is wearing out your cue word. The dog is not responding, so why are you still cueing the dog, but there's no follow through? So you want to make sure you're following through. So if you can't follow through with your dog, don't use your come keyword. You can use a default. I usually will say their name, pat my leg, and that just means, hey, I need you to kind of come over here, but I'm not calling you, or I would like to pet you, you know, come over here and I'll pet you. You're not gonna come over, okay, I'm not gonna pet you. I'm not asking the dog saying, hey, I need you to come now. It's more of a, I like your company, or I would like you to come over, but you can decide. So you can have two different types of cues, but your recall cue, you wanna make sure that you are working on it where you can follow through. If you can't follow through, then don't call the dog. Because all you're gonna do is set yourself back working on recall, because the dog will be like, wow, that one time they didn't have anything, or I got put in the house and I didn't want to go in the house. And then they start to try to do other things and avoid coming to you than coming to you because that's fun and you're the most exciting thing in the environment. So at the end of this video, I'm going to try to put, you'll see the puppy that we have that we're working with, and then I have a couple other clips I think of other foster puppies we've had that I'm going to try to add to the end of this video so you can see some recall with different types of dogs. All right. Buck in. Yes, good boy. Good boy. Okay. Buck in. In. Yes, good boy. Good boy. Yes, good boy. Buck in. Yes, good job. Buck in. In. Yes. Buck in. In. Yes, good boy. Good boy. Yes, good boy. So, if you have a puppy that gets super distracted like he does, make sure you have high value rewards, and that you can also do what I think of as the backtrack game. So I'm going to call it, reward him, move away from him, call him again, move him away. This way you're getting the dog to kind of be more engaged with you and not in the environment. And that can help to just get the cue in there, because we want them to learn that in means you need to come into us, or come if that's what you're using. You need to come into the handler. And then this way we can get it in a game. Once the dog understands what the word means, then you will get better follow through, and then we can work more on distractions added into our practice sessions. But for right now, we're just doing stuff new. Buck, sit. Yes, good boy. In. Good boy. In. Yeah. In. In.